Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Godfrey, an Associate Professor at the School of Media, Language and Communication at the University of East Anglia in Norwich, and I'm really excited to be here today to do the introductory part for our session on responding to a creative brief. It's always the hardest part, the beginning, knowing what to do, where to start, and what the first steps are in any project that you do. Responding to a creative brief is no different, and the kinds of things that you might do on a course such as the one that I teach at UEA and the exercise that we'll be doing in our session will show you how these kinds of skills are useful in all different kinds of ways. Being able to respond to a brief in a creative and interesting way is something that you're probably already doing, maybe without even realizing it. In essays, presentations, and in everyday life, communication always comes down to telling stories in interesting and convincing ways. Responding to a creative brief is no different in this regard. Your job is to find the material, the information, the sources, if you like, whatever they are, and then think about them, organise them, and work with them, like you would do data in science, or maybe archaeological sources in history, or quotes in literature, or Lego bricks, and so forth, and structure them in order to create a response that tells an interesting and engaging story. Students coming to a university to study a range of courses, including film, TV, media, production, digital culture, media, communication degrees, and so forth, will almost inevitably engage in assessments that demand some kind of response to a brief, whether this is a video essay, a presentation, a podcast, or an independently chosen essay, or, as in the case scenario for our session here, developing a brief video documenting a project for a client outside of the university. One of the most exciting things about the kind of skills that you develop on these projects is that they are really, really helpful in terms of your future career, no matter what you want to do. So many employers are now asking for video presentations as part of a recruitment process, for example, or setting workshops with mini briefs where people work together to create short projects to pitch back to the client. So being confident in approaching these kinds of things and understanding how to look at a task and identify potentially interesting ideas, which ones to take further and which ones don't make it off the drawing board, and not find yourself in a position where all you've got is material fit for the cutting room floor is really important. So while a video or a podcast might feel a bit different from writing an essay, the underlying aims and basic steps to beginning are the same. Communicating your idea in an interesting, engaging, and an appropriate way to your intended audience. What I want to do now is to think a little bit about the kinds of brief that you might find yourself working on when you get to university, and to think about the kind of things that you might want to consider when you begin thinking about planning your response. My background is as a teacher, a researcher, and a filmmaker. And before working in education, I worked in a production company and as a freelance producer, director, and editor. A good proportion of work in this sector would be made up of corporate and project work, where you're doing exactly the kind of thing that we're about to do here, working with clients to create a video for a specific purpose. During my time at UEA and elsewhere, I've also run many courses and extracurricular projects, training sessions, and so forth, involving students, community groups, and others, to create video material for clients for a variety of different purposes. Students and courses that I've created have worked for organisations like Norfolk Constabulary, worked for a local art festival, creating a film programme, working for the Norfolk Record Women's Office project, Women in Norfolk History Registry. They've created films for Norfolk Fashion Week, as well as training videos for the medical school, occupational therapists, stroke rehabilitation training, and a European history project using augmented reality to reconstruct a series of Norman castles across England and northern France, amongst others. So I want to use our session today to begin thinking about that process and to give you an opportunity to pitch your ideas in class in a session with us and see what you come up with. So, your task: respond to this brief in groups. You need to create a series of, or come up with an idea for, a series of 4 5-minute films documenting the creation of and the installation of a contemporary sensing angel in the nave of Norwich Cathedral. This project involves 2 artists, Norwich School and colleagues from Norwich Cathedral. It begins in September and the final installation takes place over the Easter weekend, with the final video needing to be completed and delivered the weekend after installation. Easy, right? Well, let's take a couple of minutes to think about what do you do next. Where do you start? How does an email from someone in a library at a cathedral develop into a video that can be seen by anyone, anywhere? Maybe more importantly, how do you make sure that the video you're making is any good? What do you need to know? What are the things you need to think about? One of the golden rules: you better start asking some questions. Before you start running for your cameras and start thinking about filming, there's a lot of work to do. Pre-production is arguably one of the most important part of the whole process, because if you don't get this bit right, your project is going to be so much harder. So firstly, look back at the brief. What are you being asked to do? What do you know? Maybe more importantly, what do you not know that you do need to know? And how are you going to find out what that is? So, to help get you thinking, there's some videos at the end of this presentation, including one of the ones that the students made in response to this particular brief for the Sensing Angel. But so you can see what they did, and it would be interesting to critique their video, think about what worked, what didn't work, and what you would do differently. But what are the kind of things you need to know from your client? Where were you going to go to for your research? Who do you need to speak to? Where do you need to film? What are the things you need to consider before, during, and after the filming? And what are the steps you need to take to get this project from an email onto the screen? What do you need? A story. What's the purpose of the video? In your pitch, you need to show that you understand what the key message, the purpose, or the idea is. You need to tell the client that you understand what they need. These need to be clear and identifiable. So in your scenario here, the brief is asking you to create a series of short videos that document the creative process and the installation of a project that involves Norwich Cathedral, 2 artists, a group of school pupils, and their art teacher. You need to think about how you can tell the story creatively and effectively. What components do you need? How do they work together to tell the story? And what are the key moments that you need to capture in order to do that? You need to think about this both for the individual components and as the series as a whole. Visuals. What will the video look like? What ideas do you have for how the video is going to look? What locations do you think you're going to need to film in? Are there any things that you might need to consider in this regard? People. Who do you need to interview? What is their role? Where will you film them? What will they do to tell the story and to move the narrative along? Style, mood, and tone. What kind of style do you think would be appropriate for this kind of brief? Have you got any ideas or reference points? Where are you looking for inspiration? Sound is often really overlooked when we're talking about film, videos. And I'm not just talking about music and speech, but also ambient sound, but also whether you need a voiceover or narration, how sound and subtitling might work as well, and matters of translation. What are the advantages and disadvantages of different approaches? Really, really importantly, asking questions. You can't know what you don't know. So it's really important to remember to ask the client and think about what questions will you ask the client in your pitch if you were responding to this brief. Most importantly, have fun. Creative work like this is meant to be enjoyable. Your client wants to see that you're enjoying it and having fun with what they're doing because that will come across in the final piece. Talking of which, here are the examples I spoke about earlier. The top one here is the video made by one of the groups of students working on a version of this brief. See what you think. What decisions would you have made differently? Which parts do you think worked well? The videos below that are a selection of the ones made in response to the Norfolk Record Office Women in Norfolk History project. I'm really looking forward to meeting you all in a couple of weeks online and hearing some of your ideas, and I hope you have lots of fun working on them. Take care. Bye-bye.